Hello and welcome to Sensei podcast. This is Manos Brilakis discussing with leaders in the field of CTO and complex PCI. Sensei means teacher or master in Japanese. The goal of the Sensei podcast is to help you learn and improve in CTO and complex PCI so that you can become the best that you can be and offer your patients the best possible results. Hello everyone and welcome to Sensei podcast. It is my great pleasure to introduce our guest today, who is Dr. James Choi from the Presbyterian Hospital in Dallas, a great friend, excellent interventionist with whom I worked a long time ago when I was in Dallas, and I'm super thrilled he is with us this morning. So James, thank you so much. Super excited to talk to you today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm not sure I'm deserving of this honor. I looked at the previous guests that you had, but I'm flattered you invited me.
No, we're super excited again, and you've done a lot of work in Dallas and in the area, so we're very excited to learn from you. So, James, I know you've been doing this for a very long time. It's been, more than a decade that we've been talking about this, and actually we had a combined meeting together on this when I was in Dallas. But tell me, how did you get into the CTO and complex interventions? How did this come along for you?
Yeah, for me, it was really, really Darwinian. I think you and I started in 2004 in Dallas after fellowship. I think it was probably maybe a year after you, something like that.
Same year.
Same year. And so I joined a busy private practice group. And in any private practice group, you're only as good as your referrals. And so I like the cath lab, and to work in the cath lab, I had to start doing things that other people couldn't do. And one kind of unmet need was complex PCI and CTO interventions. I was fortunate to have two senior interventionalists that were mentors, Bob Stoller and John Schumacher, who were very, very capable and very, very busy. So for me to kind of distinguish myself and separate myself, I had to tackle things that they wouldn't do. And one unmet need was CTOs, and that's kind of gradually how I started.
And how did you end up learning the techniques and doing the procedures? How did you get into the technical part of this area?
I think back then we did not have your algorithm that you put out, so it was kind of trial and error. I was very, very fortunate to have trained at Northwestern under Charlie Davidson and Mark Ricciardi. So they gave me and pounded in us, fundamentals of guide catheter support, wire technique. And it was only using that and just slowly, I guess, making yourself a little bit uncomfortable and trying different things, but being mindful that it always had to be patient-centered, so you couldn't go too crazy. And then with every iteration, there's kind of an evolution. And it really, the thing that really changed was those Asahi wires, the Miracle Bros, and the Confianza for me early on. And that really, really changed the dynamic. And then as things progress, you get micro catheters that make things easier. But it was really just trial and error early on. Perfect.
And then in terms of the procedures, as you say, you're in a very busy place, very high volume. How were you able to navigate through the local dynamics? Some of those cases can be long; they can take a long of time. How did you navigate this process of learning and doing these cases?
Yeah, fortunately, I was in a big place and had supportive partners that they allowed me to take that extra time early on to do those cases. And then as you have successes, the patients do awesome. There's kind of word of mouth there, but then also other people in the lab recognize that, and then they start sending you more cases, and then slowly you build that outside of the hospital to other hospitals, city, state, and whatnot. And that's kind of how I developed my referral line, is just successes and trying to do good work and do right by the patient. But I would say in terms of time, one thing for me, I'm incredibly impatient, but very, very stubborn. That's, I guess, why I love CTOs. But I've always said, for me, I have this internal shot clock, so to speak, in the cath lab. If things take longer than an hour and you may have not made significant improvement, I usually just stop because it's important that the patients, CTOs are chronic and they're there and the patients are usually relatively stable, that you don't need to put them in danger to try to open up this artery.
Perfect. And as you said, sometimes it's best to fail and do it smoothly and quickly versus after 4 hours and with a major complication on top as well.
For me, nothing good happens after an hour unless you've made significant progress. And there's one focal thing that you're trying to do. Nothing good happens, in my experience.
And then how do you actually plan for those cases? So how do you prepare for these CTOs and the other complex cases you do?
I think if we're talking about early versus now, it's evolved tremendously. I probably do more ad hoc CTOs than other people because you just get the case, and for the sake of time and not having the patient, I'd always try at least. And then I bring him back if I was not successful. But now I cannot overemphasize this for the audience. Reviewing the cine is so critical. And so when I get referrals, I usually get a cine, a cath CD that I review, and then I can say, hey, can I do this or not? And then before I meet the patient, I review it again. The day before the procedure, I review it again. And the day of, I review it again. And it's amazing how much you'll see when you look at things over and over and over.
Do you sleep on the angiogram? Do you look at it and then just the next day you come up with an idea? Or?
It's literally, I keep all my CDs. So I get a bunch of referrals out throughout the state, and I always keep the CD in my lab coat until I'm done with the procedure. Then I put it in the recycle bin, and so I don't necessarily sleep with it, but it's right there in my hip pocket.
And then how do you deal with these failures and the complications? Even the best operators in the world, they're going to have complications and failures, which can be tough. So how do you deal with that?
You have to have a plan. And so when I used to teach the fellows, with any case, I'd say you have to ask 3 questions. And the first is, why shouldn't I do this case? And you should, with any procedure that you see, you should ask, are there reasons why I shouldn't be doing this? And then you're done. The next is, why am I doing this? And you have to have a clear objective on why you're doing it. Is it for patient symptoms? Is it to reduce VT? Is it for LV dysfunction? You have to know why you're doing it, because it's not just to make a picture better, because you can get lost when you're in there. And that's going to be your compass as to when I need to quit or when I need to give up or, when I need to push on is why you're there. And then the last question is how. And how is that planning part that we talked about. But always in the planning part, you have to know, what am I going to do if things go wrong? And so, you talk about it in your book, all that you have to have a pericardial, drain at, readily available. You have to have staff that's engaged in the procedure. And that's really one thing that's really, really critical. I make sure that I know on a really, really difficult procedure, we have some of our best staff there that's engaged and believe in CTO, because if you have a disinterested co-pilot, it can make things very, very challenging. So set the stage properly to do that. Coils, you have to have a plan for everything.
Perfect. And then in terms of your evolution over time, do you think you're still learning? Do you think you've got it down pretty good? Are there some things that you're still working on? How have things evolved after all this 20 years that you've been doing this?
It is. You're always learning. That's the beauty of interventional cardiology. It's a craft that you can never master, and so you're always learning. I would say the changes that I've made over the how long has it been? 15, 16 years that I've been doing CTO interventions. Uh, the the biggest one I think is fortunately we got better equipment. I remember when we were doing retrogrades, we were using over the wire balloons. So we got better equipment, and I would say knowing the equipment, and the best if you ever can is to talk to the engineers who make the equipment. That's always better than the sales rep because they tell you why they did stuff, and engineers that make equipment are so smart, and it's so fun to talk to them and figure out because the wires are made. It, you have to use wires. I'm an avid golfer. You got it. They're like different clubs for different situations, and there's different wires for different situations, and you got to know when to use it and how to use it, and the way it was designed, and use it. If you use it the way the engineer designs it, they can do amazing things. So I would say really know the equipment and know the purpose of the equipment, in particular the wires.
So you think your golf experience has helped your CTO PCI and vice versa?
A little bit. Definitely, golf is another. It's a passion of mine. It's something that you can do and you'll never master. My new job, I'm very fortunate. I literally work right across the street from the club that I play at, so it's been a nice change there as well.
Perfect. And then, in terms of the cases, are there some cases that stand out for you, good or bad ones, over the years that taught you a lot?
I think every case you learn from. For me, I'm not a guy who loves the successes so much. I really it burns me the failures, and in particular the ones that have bad outcomes. Those still haunt me, and I use that as my motivation to always be better, I guess. But I don't remember my successes nearly as much as I remember my failures. And the failures, you have to make mistakes and you have to challenge yourself to get better. Unfortunately, sometimes there are some failures that happen, and some of the failures can be catastrophic, and you have to be prepared to deal with that, and not only just at the patient level, but also personally at the emotional level. You have to, if you're going to do this and tackle this and do it well, you have to be prepared for some big losses and failures.
Perfect. And then how do you deal with that? Are you able to just think about it, go over it? How much does it affect you? Are you able to bounce back from these cases?
Yeah, I'm able to, but it'll bother me for the bad ones will bother me for months. But you just review it. What would I have done differently? What would I have done differently? What could I have done? Was this preventable? And I think with any catastrophic thing, there's always usually three kind of, in my experience, there's 3 points where it could have been avoided if you look at it, and it's because anytime you're doing CTOs, you'll do some things that you don't want to or don't intend to, but if you recognize it, you can manage it and even still push on. It's when you don't recognize it that's where you get in trouble. And so in any one of those, or even the good cases, that's another thing that I would say is review your films afterwards too. You'll look and you'll see little planes or little areas or different collateral that you didn't notice during the procedure. And it's always good to review your cases. And I think reviewing the CNAs first and then reviewing them after is really critical. But in terms of mistakes, I don't know that I ever get over them, but it's kind of the field that we decided to do. And if you decide to do CTO, it's something you have to accept, and you just kind of just go on. I mean, I'm not paralyzed by it, but I'm never. I can't forget it, because I think if you did, then you shouldn't be doing this because ultimately it's a human being that you're taking care of. It's somebody's mother, father, brother, or sister, and you have to be very, very mindful of that. And if you're numb to that, then I don't think you're in the right field.
Perfect. I could not agree more. And again, as you said, these are the sensitive part, and at the same time, you need to move on and use what you've learned for the next patient. But speaking of that, I know that you've trained countless number of fellows at Baylor, and many people are out in practice now. When you train those fellows, how do you determine if they're going to be good or not? Is it something you can immediately tell? Is it something that becomes apparent as time goes by? How do you choose those fellows, and how do you work with them?
Yeah, I think, well, first is, and this is just a personal attribute. Do they have desire and humility and drive to get better? That's first. If you have that, you can help train anybody to do a lot of things. I think in terms of the hand skills, my little test where I could give the guy, fellow, the wire is if they can do right heart caths from the groin with a J-tip swan and make that move, then that's the kind of nuanced move, when it flips around in the RV. If they can manage that, then you can learn how to wire. Because I tell the fellows, I go, all you can do is push, pull, counter, and clock. Now, how you do that can be magic or catastrophic, but that's all you can do. And the move that I always watch them on, and a lot of the fellows think right heart caths are mundane or whatever, but I go, you gotta, that's the move. That's the move a lot of times you use to wire CTOs, is that, granted, I go, it's just a smaller wire than that. And those are kind of, I guess, I was very fortunate, at my training at Northwestern, they were really, really meticulous about that kind of technique. And if you have that, then you can translate that to CTOs. But that's the one thing that I watch if their hands are good. They can do a right heart cath from the groin without problem, and they can control that catheter.
Well, that's a good lesson for all the fellows out there who are really bored about doing right heart caths. So there you go. That's your secret to success. But then, what do you find the most difficult thing to teach them in complex or PCI in general?
One of the things I go, interventional cardiology and CTOs is a thinking man's game, and that's where planning is so important. You have to have plans, and you have to know why you're doing things. So, in a really, really busy lab, the fellows are used to cath possibles, where you just kind of plan on the go as you see the picture, and that works for very, very experienced guys. But for fellows, always stop and look, especially when the day's done. Look at your pictures. Look at them over and over and over. That's another thing that we teach our fellows. Me and Bob Stoller were really, really anal about. You can't fix it unless you can take a good picture of it. So you have to take. We pound them on taking good films, because if you can't see it, you can't fix it. And so knowing the angles and knowing how to move the things to see what you want to see, so you can eventually fix it, is really, really critical. But yeah, training the fellows it's really just time. Honestly, it's experience, and it's like, Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hours. You have to put in the time, and it invariably, if you mentor a fellow and they'll call you usually about 6 months out of practice and go, "Oh my God, now I finally understand what you're trying to teach me or tell me." And it's one of those things you cannot. And I put it out right now. My wife and I just dropped off my older son to college yesterday, and so it's one of those things where, yeah, he's gonna say, you'll never know until you experience it. And doing hard interventions and whatnot, as a fellow, you'll never know until you're the captain. and you're responsible on your own, and you don't have a parachute right next to you. And that's where it really starts to hit home. And that's where the evolution really, really grows. The biggest thing, my worrisome for the fellows, is the fellows that think they're better than they are, because they can really get in trouble. You have to go in this field with confidence, but definitely with humility that you are not God, and you are not perfect. You need to be very, very, and we can really hurt people if you're not very careful too.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, it's not uncommon to have very good cases, but then it only takes one or two really bad ones that can change the whole perspective for yourself and for the people around you as well. How many cases do you think it takes for someone to get good at doing CTO or complex interventions?
I don't know. I think you need to at least have done 1,000 regular PCIs, and then to do CTOs, I'm not. I would say early. I know the algorithm that you have and that you guys have made is awesome, and it moves the procedure. And there's definitely something about CTOs. If you're doing something and you're not getting it within 3 tries, you got to do something else. But I think it's really, really important and maybe this is just my evolution, that we had to just do wire escalation and parallel wire early on, and I did a bunch of those, and that's really, really important for wire skills. And I would say before you move on, you have to at least have 100 of those under the belt. Just simple antigrade wire escalation with parallel wires. And when I mean 100, like some hard ones where you're really challenged. And probably in those hundreds, if you're honest, 25 of those you're not going to get early on, and that's appropriate. But you're going to learn so much along the way on how to plan for those cases, and then just the tactile feel that you get from learning that is really, really important. I don't know that there's a set number. I guess it depends on the individual more than anything.
Yeah, and it would be nice to have a simulation system. As you said, one of the toughest parts in this area is you train literally on the patient. I mean, you do the cases and you learn as it goes by. Yeah. And, there are some simulations, but nothing that is really the real thing. So that's in reality, you do learn on the job.
Exactly. There's no good simulators that I've seen.
Sure. So, James, how do you keep yourself in good shape to be able to do all this? So it's, busy private practice, a lot of cases, complex cases, family. How do you balance everything?
I guess I just hit 52, and I'm on the, this is just my opinion, but I think for any proceduralist, your peak is probably somewhere around 50 or 55. And people definitely can reach higher summits than other people, but I'm starting to realize I am on the downslope of my career and my interventional abilities. There's also this thing called life that happens, and as you hit 50, your career and the things you do become less important, and other things become more important, and just by your priorities, things change. So I'm not in the lab as much as I used to be, nor do I care to be. One of the, that meeting that you and I started was with here in Dallas, the Angio Club. Jed Rosenthal was the main guy who started it, and he recently retired. And I remember he told me as he was retiring, he goes, "Choi, nobody's on their deathbed wishing they did another cath or an intervention." And so, that's part of life. And for me, I'm scaling back, so it allows me to exercise a little bit more, take care of myself. And then, for me, my passion outside is golf and my family. And family, we ski as a family, and we do things like that. But those are the things that you're ultimately going to remember when you're on your deathbed, not a, at least me, not a CTO intervention.
Perfect. So again, great reminder that it's not all about the procedures, but what excites you for down the line? As you said, 50 is a great age, but what is the next big thing for you?
For me, career-wise,
Or in any way?
so I guess career-wise, I've spent a lot of time on renal denervation. I hope that comes to the clinical market. I've seen the benefits of it, so I'm excited about the possibilities there. I actually believe today may be the day that Medtronic's going to the FDA to try to get the spiral catheter approved. It's either today or tomorrow. So hopefully that'll happen. Career-wise, I mean, personal-wise, it's like everybody else. I have 3 boys. My oldest is going to college. My youngest is in 7th grade, and just watching them grow up, and hopefully they'll be, thoughtful, independent, productive human beings that make me and my wife proud. But that's what I'm most excited about.
Perfect. And then, do you have any favorite movies or books?
Favorite movies? I don't know. I guess not really. I guess I always watch It's a Wonderful Life during Christmas season. No matter where I'm at, if that comes on, I watch it. And then on a dumber side, and a golfer, I love Caddyshack, which is just silly and stupid, but I love that movie as well. Books, I love all those Malcolm Gladwell books. That whatever he writes, I love to read those. I love, as a kid, I guess my favorite book was Crime and Punishment was my favorite one. Believe it or not, I was a philosophy major in college. So I've
Oh, wow, I didn't realize that.
a lot of Greek philosophers, Manos. You'd be proud of that. But yeah, I guess those would be it.
So it's fascinating. I think your friend Raja Chwadwani also has the It's a Wonderful Life. That's his favorite movie as well. So I don't know if you guys watched it during your training or what, but
yeah, I'm glad you got Raj involved in the Progress CTO. He's a great friend and an excellent interventionalist, and very, very passionate about advancing the field. So he's a wonderful addition. I didn't know he was so sappy like me.
no, you guys have many things to common. I think it helps give the common training. But what I didn't realize is that you were a philosophy major. So how did you switch from philosophy major to interventional cardiology? That's fascinating, because people call us sometimes that we're just mindless and just pushing the catheters, right? So how did that happen?
I think probably my junior year in college, also at Michigan with my where my son's going. I realized that being a philosophy professor would never pay for my golf habit. So that's where I decided I needed to shift gear. My father was a physician, so my mother, a good Korean Asian mother, would always pound you that you need to grow up to be a doctor. So eventually I succumbed and became a doctor.
Was she a cardiologist or different specialty?
No. My mom was the coach who raised us, but my father he was the physician. He was a GP, general practitioner. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure he'll be very proud to see what you've done so far today. But in terms of the things that you are proud of, what are the things that you are most proud of, both in medicine and outside medicine?
I guess in medicine, 2 things. I guess I'm proud of the reputation that I've gotten in the Dallas community in Texas. I've worked hard for that, and I'm proud that I'm recognized by many of my colleagues as someone to go to for the difficult, challenging cases. Second is there was a period of time where I was the interventional fellowship director at Baylor, and the fellows that we put out at that time are really, really top-notch proceduralists and interventionalists, and I'm very, very proud that I had a significant part of that maturation. Outside, I guess, like anything, you're proud of. I'm proud that I'm still married to my first wife, and we have, 3 beautiful boys, and but I'm humbled and that I'm really, really blessed to have all that as well.
Perfect. Well, so James, again, done phenomenal work, and it's an area that you've served many people in Dallas and actually the whole Texas in general. But if you had to give your advice for people who are early in their careers or starting now, the fellows, the early career intervention, want to do CTO and complex PCI, what are the things that you would advise them to do to get to their maximum potential?
I guess I would say stay humble. Know that, and don't be afraid to stop if you're not going well. Have confidence that sometimes the lesion's just too hard. That would be one. Two, I would say one great thing, and this goes back to health. Try to use fluoro at 375 rate and train your eyes to do that, because radiation is a necessary evil, and it's a maybe a quiet killer in our field. So I would train your eyes to do that. That was been one huge thing that I maybe started about when these new cameras came out. That's really it cuts your fluoro exposure in half, and so that would be a second one that I would do. And then third is learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. We recently just took a family trip to Switzerland, and one of the things we did was a zip line. And right when you're about to get pushed off on the zip line, there's this feeling of, oh my God, what am I? And that's some of the feeling you get in a CTO, and you have to be comfortable feeling that. And go and have the confidence that, I planned this, I'm using the right equipment, and kind of trust that, the zip line will be there, but you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Wonderful. Well, James, again, it was wonderful talking to you today. Again, thanks for everything you've done for the area and for the patients in Dallas and beyond. And thanks for your participation in Progress as well. We've been delighted, one of the highest enrollers and doing phenomenal work there. So thanks for everything. Super excited to keep on working and seeing you at the meetings.
Yeah, Manos, thank you so much. And thank you for all that you do to the field. And say hi to Nicole and the boys for me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Sensei podcast.